Hi, my name is Taylor Vandevelde, and I'm answering the research question of how you might increase the affordable housing stock in the Kansas City area. Housing provides the basic need for shelter, but it also contributes to health, education, employment opportunities, access to cultural amenities, and public service qualities, according to Gotham, published in 2014. There has been increasing interest in the affordable housing issue in Kansas City with media coverage and also my senior studio project on affordable housing in the Kansas City, Missouri area specifically. My team of 7 students studied past actions and events, also current conditions of the city, and future needs of the residents. Our findings suggested that the city of Kansas City, Missouri underestimated the high demand for more affordable housing, but increased media attention was making it much harder to ignore that. So the purpose of this speech is to elaborate on what affordable housing is, also to inform the listener of affordable housing history, specifically in the Kansas City area, determine structural issues affecting affordable housing, and also to provide substantive recommendations to increase the affordable housing stock in Kansas City. So what is affordable housing? The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, aka HUD, determines that housing costs should be no more than 30% of monthly household income, including utilities, to be considered affordable, according to the HUD.gov website. In Kansas City, over 44% of renters spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and over 87% of households with an annual income of less than $20,000 are rent burdened. Additionally, paying more than 30% of income on housing can lead to declines in mental health, reduced parental enrichment spending and cognitive achievement for low and moderate income children, and reduce educational attainment among children, end quote, according to HUD User, published in 2017. The history of affordable housing and the government's reaction to the issue is an important element when considering the future of affordable housing in Kansas City. So, a brief history of affordable housing, including 2 very important legislative actions taken in housing history, is the National Housing Act of 1934 and then the Housing Act of 1937. These 2 housing acts sparked federal housing assistance in the form of federal subsidies for housing. It also established the Federal Housing Administration, or the FHA, which I will be continuing to talk about later on in the speech. The FHA proposed the use of federal subsidies and the power of eminent domain to local agencies to acquire and clear blighted land, essentially. The private sector supported the government clearing slums, but believed it should be left to the private market to rebuild and develop, which is problematic, obviously. The private sector also perceived public housing as basically an open door to housing discrimination and increased class and racial residential segregation, according to Gotham in 2014. Kansas City has historically been racially and residentially segregated, if you're unfamiliar, particularly along the Truce Corridor, but current political actions, such as budget cuts, are deepening this issue of affordable housing. Section 235 of the FHA was intended to open the door for the low-income populations into the private housing market, but ultimately it was abused by multiple private interests, furthering the pattern of spatial segregation between race and economic class during the 1970s and 1980s, according to Gotham. Though the need for housing assistance has risen, in late 2017, the Missouri Housing Development Commission slashed $140 million from the Missouri Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, which is a program I'll explain later. It is also important to understand the different ways in which the government may provide housing assistance to completely understand affordable housing. Public housing is the oldest of affordable housing assistance programs, dating back to the New Deal implemented in 1937, according to Salhotra in 2018. Now, according to Smitek in 2014, public housing was constructed for those suffering during the Great Depression, but has long been under attack due to heavy deregulation, or, quote, the elimination of federal rules and monitoring of public housing assistance. Sinya and Cashin, 2013, page 239. Originally, Section 8 housing, or housing choice vouchers, was introduced 37 years after public housing was implemented, according to Sohoto in 2018. This program allows tenants to rent a 30% of their income in any rentable unit in their city that will allow it. So certain units may allow it and certain units may also not allow it, which is also an issue since that's up to the private market, according to Howell, 2015. Lastly, the most recent of programs, Low Income Housing Tax Credits, or LIHTC, the abbreviation is commonly referred to, was created in 1986, so this is way more recent than the other two. This program is a way to basically incentivize developers into providing affordable housing units when they probably wouldn't have without it, and becoming more favorable by the federal government, according to Sineo and Castan in 2013, obviously because it's placing more rights or burden onto the private market versus the federal government to provide housing. So after considering past and political social actions, looking at the future of affordable housing is needed for the Kansas City area. Some of the issues created by the actions might be solvable by some of the following. According to Blumenthal in 2016, mixed-use developments, which is developments with multiple land uses such as residential, commercial in the same building, high-density residential developments along transportation corridors, such as Prospect and Truce Corridor in Kansas City, and also redeveloping oversaturated commercial developments into residential uses. Another solution is the use of inclusionary zoning as opposed to exclusionary zoning, much like in Kansas City. According to Dawkins and the others, describes inclusionary zoning as, quote, a local regulatory tool that requires or incentivizes the provisions of new affordable housing by developers as a condition for a residential development permit, end quote, 2017, page 445. Another aspect of affordable housing that is becoming increasingly relevant is the aging population and their housing preferences. A program to assist with the age-in-place concept would help alleviate the financial burden of the elderly and help residents be more independent and not rely on institutional help, which is more costly for them. Additionally, with housing supply for the elderly in high demand, alternatives such as ancillary units, which are also commonly referred to as granny flats or mother-in-law apartments, are viewed as a good solution to many authors such as Antonetti in 2008, Hurt 2010, Chapman and Howe 2001, Pollock 1994, and Pfeffer in 2015. Another local solution is increasing taxes of private property owners that keep their properties vacant for a while. According to Dreyer 2018, this property tax increases in taxes would give the city more leverage to acquire the land, page 63, which removes the land from the market and makes it easier to construct housing projects. So in conclusion, the issue of affordable housing has reached a tipping point as the waiting list for public assistance has grown. With the inception of public housing in the 1930s to the newest form of assistance, LIHTC, the government is attempting to further assistance, but pushing the control further to the private market and much farther away from public housing, which, deregulation and budget cuts have minimized those quite a bit. Finally, housing can no longer be seen as a private commodity, rather it must be viewed and treated as a basic human right. So, thank you.